Hello, Bruins, and welcome to UCLA Alumni Career Engagement's Career Conversation Series. I'm your host, Katie Russo, Director of Alumni Career Engagement at UCLA. First off, I want to acknowledge that this time is truly unprecedented. The UCLA Alumni Association will be working hard during this time to support you with resources and content. We're kicking off our series today with effective job search strategies during a pandemic. I'm very excited to have UCLA alumna and featured speaker, Emily Baxt, principal at Baxt Consulting and career counselor at the University of San Diego. Before we get started, I wanted to address a few housekeeping items for today's session. First, we'll have about 35 to 40 minutes of content, and then we'll leave time to answer your questions that you all may have during our Q&A portion. Many of you submitted questions when you registered for this webinar, so we'll start with a few popular questions from your registration, but please use the Q&A feature to ask your questions, and we will get to as many as we can, time permitting. Second, in a follow-up email, once our webinar ends, our team will share a webinar feedback survey email, as well as links to many of the career resources that we'll reference today, so that you can utilize those after this webinar is over. Additionally, that same email will have the recording of this webinar for you to access too. And now we will go ahead and get started, and I will turn it over to Emily to introduce herself and take it away.
Everyone, I'm glad you've all been able to join us. My name is Emily Baxt. I'm a 92 alumna from UCLA with a degree in women's studies, now gender studies. I also have a master's degree in counseling with an emphasis in career counseling, and I'm a licensed professional clinical counselor here in California. In my consulting business, I work a lot with team and leadership development workshops and individual coaching in companies. And I've also had the pleasure of working in a part-time appointment at the University of San Diego's Career Development Center for the past 20 years, where I work with undergraduate students, graduate students, alumni. My clients range in age from 17 to 80, and I really enjoy working with people on all of those life and career transitions. So thank you again for all of you for joining us. I want you to know I read all of the questions you submitted in your registration ahead of this workshop, and I'm going to try to get to as many of them as I can. But as Katie said, please use the chat feature to add other questions in as well. So the workshop today, what I really want to focus on are action steps. In life, there are so many things we can't control, and I think that that's very obvious with what we're going through in this current situation. But right now, I think there's also a lot of things we can't do, like we're physically limited to being in our house, many of us. So really what I want to look at is what can we do? What can we control in the job search right now? What I do want to acknowledge before we get started too far is for many people who have unexpected job changes, like a layoff, there's often feelings of grief and loss that come along with that can really blindside people. So a lot of clients I work with who've been laid off are surprised by those feelings, or they think somehow they shouldn't be feeling those types of things. I just want to acknowledge that that's a really common reaction to change that we can't control. And by acknowledging it, it just means give yourself some grace. You may need to take some time around self-care. You may find that you're not as productive as you think you should be, and that's okay. So we work on the steps that we can do as we move forward. Also, I recognize that many of you are needing to work on some really short-term goals right now. That might be something like filing for unemployment or doing some type of work just to secure your immediate financial security, and that's fine. What we're going to be talking about today, though, is looking more at some of those long-term goal steps. So what are some things we can be doing right now to help you get a job that fits into your career trajectory, however you see that? So that's just to frame what we're going to be doing today. The action steps that we're really going to focus on that I'm going to look at, I'm going to talk about some tips for applying for jobs online. And then I'm also going to spend quite a bit of time today talking about networking and how important it is and how we can do it from home. All right. The number one question I'm getting these days from my clients, and really for the past 3 weeks, is, should I even be applying to jobs right now? And the answer is yes. There's a lot of news, a lot of media coverage, I think, on industries that are not hiring, doing layoffs, and that's definitely the case. And I'm very empathetic for those of you who've been impacted by those particular industries. But when I go into looking at a job listing service like LinkedIn, you can search by date posted. And that's one of my number one tips, whether you're looking in for the current students, if you're looking at Handshake, if you're looking on LinkedIn, any job site you're looking on, search by date posted. That's going to bring up the jobs that are being recruited right now. So that will help take care of things like sometimes people find older listings, and a lot, the situation's been very fluid. A lot has changed. If you see a posting from a month ago, I'm not sure. But if you see a posting from 2 days ago, you can have a lot more confidence that that job is being actively recruited. Another resource that I think is really important to look at or can be helpful is online. There's a number of different sites that are crowdsourcing information about different companies and whether they're hiring in a hiring freeze or laying off. And Katie's going to have a few of those in the resources that she sends out, so you can look at those. As with any crowdsourced information, I encourage you to validate that information by looking at different companies' websites and really checking on those. But it can be a great way to just sort of take the temperature on a particular industry or see what companies are coming up for that. As we move through with the job search, one thing I'm also encouraging my clients is have some flexibility around your search. And what I mean by that is I always want you to have a plan A, which is your dream job in your dream industry in your dream city. But then I also want a plan B, a plan C, a plan D, and so on and so forth. And really what we're looking at there is acknowledging that with the changes that are outside of our control with the economy, we may need to be looking at maybe a functional area that you want, but it's going to be in a different industry or a different city. Or you may not hit the salary level that you are aiming for at this moment. But the goal there is if you are making an adjustment to your career plan or to your next step of your career, keep your eye on the future. Have the goal of where you want to end up and make sure that this role is taking you a step closer to that. And then we find ways to fill in those gaps to continue forward. And just know it doesn't mean you've done anything wrong. You are like the rest of us. We're in this economy that we can't control. Another piece that you can always control and work on are your materials. So when I look at written materials like resumes, CVs, LinkedIn profiles, cover letters, this is an opportunity for you to control your narrative, which I love. It's a chance for you to provide information to a particular audience, whether it's a particular employer or an industry, to show why you're qualified and relevant. So I really like that you're in control of that. I would take this time to update your materials. So look at when was the last time you've looked at your resume? Update it, make sure that you are including not just job duties, but accomplishments and metrics. So really look at what you've accomplished in a particular role, what you've learned. A question I use a lot with clients to help get at that information is, what are you proud of from a particular experience? If you can start writing out what you're proud of or thinking about that, you're going to uncover some goals and some accomplishments that you're proud of that you're going to be able to incorporate in your written materials. Another really important thing, I had several questions ahead of time. People asked about how to get through the online application process. This is where tailoring your materials becomes so important. So if you have a job listing that you are interested in applying to, I would say look at your resume and your written materials, look at that job ad, and make sure that you are responding to the job ad. And what that means is you're not going to use the exact same resume for every job you apply to. There's going to be a lot of similarities and a lot of commonalities. But when you're looking at a job ad, you want to see what exactly is this company asking for. They're listing to you what they look for, what they need to solve their problems. You want to make sure that you are going through your materials and responding specifically to that. There's a couple of online websites that are great for helping you look at this applicant tracking system, how they match the job ad to the resume, excuse me. One is called jobscan.co and one is called carmen.co, and Katie's included both of those in the list as well. It gives you the opportunity to post in the job ad and the resume and see if you're hitting the keywords, and it can give you a feedback score on that. I think that can be incredibly helpful for really tailoring that. There were also several questions from your registration form around ageism, and that could be a completely different workshop. But I just take a minute to respond to, for those of us who've been in the workforce a little bit longer. I really want you to focus in your written materials on your most recent 10 years. So really that should be the focus. A resume does not have to be a complete work history. I don't need to see jobs from the 80s or even the 90s in there. What I do want to see is, what have you done lately? I also encourage maybe take off the dates from your graduation years. Make sure that you are updated with relevant skills. If you've been using the same resume text for 7 years, it's time to refresh. And again, really look to tailor the materials there. And I think it's also really important to make sure that your online presence is up to date. So depending on your industry, there's going to be different social media platforms that are used. I would say as a minimum, focus on LinkedIn, since that is specifically around professional networking. Make sure your make sure you have a professional picture and that your information is updated. And for everyone, make sure that your LinkedIn information matches your resume information. It can be a big red flag to a recruiter if what they receive as a resume doesn't match what's online. Along with your written materials, I really encourage you to prepare for interviews as well. And the way you can do that is start jotting down stories, collect stories of challenges you've overcome, accomplishments, projects you've worked on, things that you would want to make sure a future employer can know about you. And then I really want you to practice telling those stories out loud. And so practice interview questions. Do it with a friend, find somebody else who's job searching. Practice answering those questions out loud, because it can make a real difference in your confidence and your ability to articulate those. I think also we should all be prepared right now for video interviewing. Some of you have participated in video interviewing before and others haven't. So there's a lot of great resources online right now about preparing for video interviews, but a few key tips and things I would focus on are practice with the software. So download the free version of Zoom or WebEx or whatever you think you're using, get a friend to do the same thing, and just practice having conversations with it so you're comfortable with it. Check your background, check your lighting, make sure that you're comfortable with how you're presenting, and practice looking at the camera. So my temptation is to look at Katie's face on the screen, but then I'm not looking at you. So instead you have to look at the camera. So you can tell I've been practicing that too. And just always with any of your presentation, whether it's your written presentations or your oral presentations in an interview situation, make sure that you're focusing on the skills needed by that particular employer, and make sure that you're keeping your skills relevant. So that's one thing. I was joking ahead of time that I have certainly learned a lot about Zoom in the past 3 weeks, and now I feel like this is a skill that I can include, and it's something I can work on.
Yes, definitely.
And for those who are looking for more specific tips on resumes or cover letters or interviewing, again, I think Katie has a great list of resources from UCLA that will be able to help you.
Yes, for sure.
All right. So that brings me to the second question I'm hearing so often from my clients right now, which is it even okay to be networking right now? And so that is, I think the question itself really shows the sensitivity that people have around the situation that we're in. I say that networking is always valuable, particularly in a weaker economy, because it's an opportunity for you to make connections and find out about opportunities and job listings that may not be online. So it's really valuable to do it. And as far as doing it right now during the COVID-19 crisis, I think now more than ever. Many people are looking for connection. You know, all of us are participating in social distancing, except for our essential workers who are, exhausted. But being able to connect with someone right now, I think is a great opportunity. And being able to do it, we have the technology now to do that over the phone or Zoom, which is really helpful. I think the important piece as you move forward with networking in this current climate is just leading with emotional intelligence. And what I mean by that is having empathy for the people at the other end. What that looks like in practice, I think, is it's fine to acknowledge that it's awkward right now and that it may be difficult to network. It's completely appropriate in a cover letter or a reach out email to acknowledge that we're in the middle of this unprecedented crisis. But it's also being respectful around people's time boundaries or other boundaries, recognizing that everyone's going through a struggle right now and giving grace to people if they don't get back to you. Sometimes my clients tell me, Emily, I don't want to do networking. I hear that a lot for a lot of different reasons, but I think some of the reasons people feel sometimes like networking is mercenary or one-sided somehow, like they're out to get something. But really, networking is not transactional in that way. Networking is just having a conversation with someone on an individual level. So that's another way to frame it. I also encourage and tell all my clients, the way that you are able to give something back is with your attention and your listening. So that you can never underestimate how powerful it is to just be able to give someone your full attention while they're talking and being able to listen to them. So you always have at least that to offer. Informational interviews are really the type of networking I'm going to talk about and focus on, and those are one-on-one conversations. And an informational interview is an opportunity for someone to just talk about their role, their career trajectory, their company, and to give you any advice that they may have. So people love to talk about themselves and give advice. So it's being sometimes a great conversation and people are willing to do it. But I also say right now, you're giving people the opportunity to help. I think so many of us right now want to be able to help during this current crisis, but we're not all healthcare providers. So there's not, sometimes we can't take care of those immediate needs. But up and down my LinkedIn profile, I see people saying, I want to help, I want to help. So I think right now, reaching out to someone for an informational interview is really a great chance to allow them to also help you. So with informational interviews, you're not going to call someone and ask, can you get me a job? Because that would be really awkward for you and really awkward for them as well. Instead, what you're going to do is just reach out with a specific request around their time. And so sort of when preparing for an informational interview, I think it's really helpful when you do reach out to let people know what it is, how they can help you and what it is you want. Something along the lines of, I'm a UCLA alum, I found you on LinkedIn. I'd love to set up a 30-minute Zoom call with you sometime in the next week to talk about your experience at Qualcomm. That way the person at the other end can decide whether or not that they can accommodate that request. So 30 minutes, sometime this week, talk about my job. Okay, so this person, lets them know this person isn't asking me to hire them or get them involved, get them in. They just want to hear about my experience. So that's one way to reach out with that. Once you do secure that meeting time, I encourage you to just have questions prepared ahead of time. And again, I know Katie's going to be sending a list of questions and some suggestions, but the types of questions I like to ask are, what brought you to this company? What keeps you here? What's a typical day like for you? What surprised you the most about working in this job? And then you can also transition to questions like, what advice would you have for someone like me who's looking to break into this field or in this company? Is there anyone else you recommend I talk to? So having those kinds of questions allows them to talk about themselves and give advice and also start to direct you. After the information interview, it's very important to follow up. So you want to send a thank you note. You definitely want to thank that person for their time, for taking the time to meet with you, speak with you, and provide that information. But you also want to link in with them if you haven't already, and keep the connection going if you can. And what I mean by that is, think about if you read an article that you think might be interesting to them, send them a note with that article. I think also at the end of your job search, when you do accept a position and start your new position, it's wonderful to reach back out to everyone who info interviewed with you or helped you in any way and let them know where you landed. So that really can help people just have some closure and be happy for you. Katie, I think you have a great story about info interviewing.
Yes, I was going to jump in and just, I just want to echo and highlight Emily's note about informational interviews, and I think the untapped power of them and the rewards and benefits that can come from them. So my personal story is in working with Emily about 3 years ago, when I was unemployed and moving back to California and, kind of working through my job search. This was a strategy she suggested to me as I was trying to go about building up my network in Los Angeles and searching for jobs there. And I was able to find a woman working in UCLA Alumni Affairs on LinkedIn. We had a mutual connection. I reached out to her and she connected the two of us. I set up a 30-minute phone call and asked, just as Emily mentioned, asked for a request 30 minutes of her time to kind of talk about her role there, how she got there, what advice she'd have for me if I was looking for similar roles as the one she was in. And we had a great fantastic conversation. And from there, at the time, there was no job openings at UCLA, but I was continuing to keep that on my radar. And about a month after our conversation, that same woman emailed me and said, there's two, openings in our department. And after our conversation, I thought you might want to check these out. If you're interested, let me know. And I can, forward your resume along to the hiring manager. So, those are, I think, just some of the amazing things that can come from an informational interview, from you investing time and energy to learn about that person's career path, learn about their organization, and really get that unique insight that you can leverage in your job search. So definitely want to highlight the power of informational interviews and how beneficial it can be.
Great. Thanks, Katie.
Mm-hmm.
So really, what I look at with that when I'm working with my clients, you can't guarantee that some kind of wonderful outcome will occur from an info interview. Instead, I really encourage you just to go in with curiosity. At the very least, what you can gain from an informational interview, you will be learning about a company, a culture, learning some information that may help you in tailoring your materials. Another question that I had ahead of time too, a couple of people were asking about, how can I find out information about a company's DEI? So like their diversity, equity, and inclusion culture beyond what they say about themselves on their website. An info interview is a great opportunity to ask someone who's in the culture about what that is like, what their experience is. So at the very least, you're getting that type of information. But what we hope for with information interviews is that you might get some of that extra that happens. Like what Katie said, somebody reached back out to her and let her know about a position. When Katie applied to that position, she wasn't just a resume. She wasn't just a piece of paper. Someone had already met her and talked to her. And that can really help get you out of the pile and into the interview pile, which is the goal. Mm-hmm. Also, I think that the online job search, as many of you have probably experienced, can be what I call soul crushing. You apply and apply and apply, and you just don't hear anything back sometimes, and you start to doubt yourself. Am I doing something wrong? Is something wrong with me? Am I never going to get a job? When really it's kind of a numbers game, and that's the experience a lot of people have. Having info interviews can really help keep your motivation up for the job search, because you're having these interesting conversations with human beings who can tell you about their jobs, and you start realizing, okay, this person did it, I'm going to be able to do it, and they may be able to help me. It can just really help keep you moving forward with your job search. All right, now that we've talked about why info interviews are so great and why you want to do them, I'm going to give you some very specific tips around tools and techniques about how to find people to talk to in the first place. So I always start, when I'm working with clients too, I always start with the fact, look at your own network first. So what I mean by that is people you've worked with in the past, former colleagues, former classmates, neighbors, maybe family friends. I just say, look around and see if there's anyone you can talk to. But also with my clients, I assume no network, because I have so many students and other clients who will say, I just don't have that kind of family network. I don't know people in this field. I don't know people in this city or the industry. And that's fine. Use your personal network if you have it, start there. But I'm going to show you some tools to help you develop your social capital by using social media. So we can start from scratch. So what I'm going to do is share my screen with you right now. And we're going to look at the platform that UCLA provides for alumni called UCLA One. So here on the screen, you'll see UCLA One. Katie is going to be also in that resource. This is going to be a long resource list that you're getting. Include information about how to register for UCLA One if you're not already using it. So UCLA One is a platform where UCLA alumni and students and other Bruin family members can participate. What I'm going to start with is over here on the left, you'll see the directory. Once I select that, that's going to pull up a list of all the people who've registered in UCLA One. And then you'll have some filters over here on the right. The first filter I want to look at is affiliation. So I'm going to pick alumnus because what I want to look at are specifically UCLA alumni. So from there, I have a few other options and ways I can narrow it down. Here where it says work experience, this is where I spend most of my time. With work experience, the options that you're going to see are company, so you can search by a company name, industry, so you can look by in a specific industry, or job function. So you can pull all of those, and I'm going to do an example of this in a moment. Just while we're here in this over on the right, I want you also to look under UCLA You can search by your major, by the degree you gained, by graduation year, or by communities. Perhaps you participate in one of these identity groups. It just gives you another layer of affiliation and commonality as you're reaching out to people. But let's say I'm going to look at work experience, and maybe I read online that Warner Brothers is still hiring. So I'm going to type in Warner Brothers, and you're going to see right here, it's going to pull up 74 people, alums, who are listed that work at Warner Brothers. Any of these people are possible info interview connections. So you can see some people have this banner right here that says willing to help. That means when they filled out their profile, they specifically said, yes, let me connect with people. I want to help you. But you don't have to limit yourself to those people. You can certainly reach out to anyone on the platform. So as I scroll through, you can take a look at people's roles and also their degree and graduation date from UCLA. And as I'm scrolling down, so Laura Barrero, she's a talent acquisition recruiter. So this might be somebody who'd be really helpful for me to reach out to and have a conversation with. If I click on her, I can see her profile. You'll see that there's some, like a summary of information she's written about herself. You can look about what the degree is. And if I scroll down to the bottom, you can even see her experience chain, sort of like a LinkedIn style here. So if I decided that this would be a good person for me to talk to, just click right here on message, and that'll open up a message window where you can communicate back and forth and request that information interview. UCLA One has a lot of other features. One I want to highlight over here on the left, you'll also see groups. And Katie, do you want to talk for a minute about groups?
Yes, I'd love to. So the groups feature within UCLA One is another great resource for you all to take advantage of, especially during this time. As you can see, as Emily scrolls down, we have a lot of different ones that are industry-based. So as you can see, Bruins and Biotech, communications, education, entertainment. So please join and connect in those groups that are relevant to whatever industry you're currently in, or if for those of you that are considering a career change or a pivot, join the groups that make sense for that other industry that you're exploring or trying to leverage your experience in. As you also see, we even have unique groups that are associated with professional schools and academic programs. And then we also have two additional groups, as you can see highlighted there with Emily, that we have added for this COVID-19 time. So we have a job seekers resource group that we will be sharing resources and articles for those of you that are currently job seeking or were recently laid off. We'll be sharing information in there. And then our working from home resource group, right? As we're all figuring out this new normal of being at home and trying to still do our jobs in the best way we can and managing boundaries and everything else going on, we will also be sharing some content and helpful resources or links to articles to support you in this transition of working from home.
Great, thank you, Katie. So I would encourage all of you to go into UCLA One and create a profile and start using this resource. It's a great one. Okay, the next thing we're going to look at here is LinkedIn. So LinkedIn is a fabulous resource for lots of things work related. And if you're not using LinkedIn, I strongly encourage you to do so. Now, there was a few questions ahead of time too. Somebody asked, do I really need to use LinkedIn? I would say it really depends on the industry. There are a few industries that connect in other ways, but I think that LinkedIn can be really, really helpful. So here we are on my screen in LinkedIn. The tool that I really want to focus on today is the alumni search tool. So in order to reach UCLA alumni, what I'm going to do is type UCLA right here in the upper search bar, and you'll see that I want the school page. So this little word school right next to UCLA, we're going to click on that. From here on the left-hand side, there's a choice that says alumni. By the way, this is a great page to follow as well. But if you click on the alumni, this is going to pull up all 419,000 people on LinkedIn who say they have a degree from UCLA. Could be undergrad, grad, professional degree, they're all on here. So there's a couple of different ways we can start searching through these alumni. One is in this general search bar right up here. You can always throw in a keyword, a title, company, other words like that. But I like to do a little bit of sorting first. So here, or filtering, here you have the option for where they live. You can also select a company by where they work. And if I go to this next screen, you can search by functional area or by their major or what they studied. So let me start this. All right, let's say that you can always click here to show more. I want to work at Illumina in San Diego. So if I click San Diego and then I select Illumina, it came up because it's one of the top employers, but you could also click right here and add and type in any company name. So I pick Illumina, and I'm going to find that we have 79 UCLA alumni working in San Diego at Illumina. And if I scroll down, I can see them all right here. 79 is a little large of a number for me to look through, so I'm going to go over to the next screen and pick a functional area. So let's say I work in marketing. I really want to work in marketing at Illumina. That's going to pull up 4 people who work in that area. So with each of them, when you click on their profile, you're going to be able to read a little bit more about them and see if this is going to be someone who might be helpful for you. And there's a couple of different ways you can connect with somebody if you do find that they're interesting to you. I'm going to jump back out and pull up the next person because I want to start with this. So if I decide that Ali might be a great person for me to talk to, the first thing I'm going to look at is in this highlights section, do we have any mutual connections? And we do. So what that means is I'm going to reach out to my connection, Shauna, and ask her if she can connect me with Ali. Because what can happen then, if she sends a joint email, he's going to be much more likely to respond to me. And I'm all about, increasing my return on investment when I'm working in LinkedIn. If I didn't have a mutual connection, the next thing I might look for is if we are in a group together, which is also going to be in this highlights section. So I'm going to jump back to Christina really quickly because she and I were in a mutual group. We both belong to UCLA Alumni, which is a group on LinkedIn. So what I want you to notice is, first I should say, everything I do on LinkedIn, I do with a free account. So this is kind of why I'm showing you all these different ways to go around. I don't think anyone needs to do a paid premium account unless they just really want to. But you'll notice if I tried to message Christina from this page, I can't. See that little lock right there? That's LinkedIn wants me to have a premium account to be able to message her directly. What I can do instead is go to the group. When you're in a group with someone, you're able to message them for free in that group. So I have to go to the group page, which is right here, the UCLA group, and I need to look at the members page. So here I am with the 46,000 people in the UCLA group, and I'm going to type in Christina's name.
And I just want to plug here, so for those of you who have not joined the UCLA alumni group on LinkedIn, please join, because as you can see, there's over 419,000 of you on LinkedIn and only just about over 46,000 in our group. So make sure you go on to LinkedIn and request to join our group, because that's another place we'll be sharing a lot of resources and content during this time to help you all.
Yes. And I do see in this group people posting jobs to
I've seen that as well,
which is, I think, really important. So back here on my screen, when I get into, I've searched her name, I've pulled up Christina, now I have this option to message her. So I can click here and send her a direct message. So that's a great way to send a free message through LinkedIn. All right, I'm gonna pull up one other person. Another option you can have is if you don't have a mutual connection and you're not in a mutual group, it's okay to just connect with someone. So sometimes you'll see this connect button right here. Other times it won't show up and you have to look in this more section to get it. But if you hit connect, it gives you the option to write a message. And I encourage you to take that option. This is where you're going to be able to write, I'm a UCLA alum. I'd love to connect with you and talk to you about your experience at Illumina. And then when you send your invitation, it's not just that generic, I'd like to add you to my LinkedIn network message. This way it lets people know. The key to doing this, to be able to personalize like this, first of all, you have to be using the desktop version. You can't do it from the mobile site, so don't try it from your phone. And the other piece is you need to be on the person's profile when you send that connect message. So if you're finding them up in like that, the section on LinkedIn sometimes where it'll say like people you may know, where it's kind of seeing people from you, you're not able to personalize your message from that screen. So I'm always making somebody's profile to send that message. All right, while we're in LinkedIn, I can't resist showing you just a little bit about the jobs section. When we are here in the jobs, let's do finance now. In Chicago. You can pick whatever location, obviously, wherever you're looking. Once you've done this, this is where I use this date posted feature. So maybe I only care about the past 24 hours or the past week. But you can see in the past week, there's been 2,000 jobs posted
Wow.
in finance in Chicago. So not every single one of those is going to be relevant for you, obviously, and you can also narrow down with some of these other sorts. But it's a way to help you see what is being posted right now. Also, right up here, this job alert, you can turn this on, and from that search, that was just from the search we just did, and you can say, I want to receive an alert daily, weekly, however often, whether or not you want to give it by email. And that's a way that you can have LinkedIn working for you and doing this search for you while you're not even online.
And can I add 2 things with this job search tool, Emily?
Please do.
The 2 things I wanted to add, like Emily said, I think for many of you that are ranging in kind of where you're at in your career, as Emily highlighted at the top right, that experience level is also going to be one of your best filters to utilize, depending on where you're at. If you're mid-senior level, executive, associate, if you're new professional, entry level, that will help you tailor so that you're not spending time reading job descriptions that are asking for 8 years experience when you just graduated 2 years ago. So you utilize that experience level filter as well. And then with the job alerts, as Emily showed, you can manage up to 10 different free job search alerts with the normal LinkedIn free account. And so if for those of you that are searching for different types of roles and even in different industries, you can set up to 10 different free ones and manage those all under that little jobs briefcase tab with your job alerts. So you can have those working off the clock for you as well.
Great. Thank you, Katie. I'm going to stop sharing my screen. Just a few other things I want to mention in terms of networking, a few other places that can be really effective. Professional organizations, definitely look at the professional organizations in your industry or in your field. Every website I've been checking, organizations are moving their events virtual, just like the rest of the world. And that can be a great opportunity to connect with someone. Some of the events are a little more like webinars. They might be more informational, but some of them are happy hours, networking events, mixers. With those types of events, you're not going to have long, in-depth one-on-one conversations with people, but you can connect with people and meet some people, get their information, and then set up an information interview afterward in order to connect with them a little more deeply. I also, a lot of my clients have success looking at meetups. So even just searching for meetups around their functional area or industry area or location. So information interviews and this type of networking is helpful for people who are just getting into a field, for people who are coming back after a break or from a layoff, excuse me. I think several of you were talking about moving to another city or trying to transition to a new location. It can be helpful for that. I really think it's just a way for you, no matter what transition you're making, to start connecting with people in your field who can help you. The one last piece of advice I have is set up some sort of system to keep track of your job search. So for some people, that's going to be a spreadsheet. It can be a binder, like whatever works for you. But as you're applying to jobs online, download or print out or somehow save those job descriptions, because by the time you get an interview, they could be gone on the internet and you don't remember what the job was that you applied. I encourage people to track what they applied to, when they applied, have a copy of the job description, and then track any responses. Did you receive a response? Did you have an interview? What's the next step? And also do the same thing for your networking. So keep track of who you've reached out to, who responded, when you met with them, what you talked about, did you send a thank you note? Not only does that help keep you organized during your job search, but one of the issues I do see a lot with clients is this sense of looking at the job search as a black and white situation. I either have a job or I don't have a job. And that you're going to hear a lot of no's before you get that one yes that matters. So by keeping track of the steps that you're taking every week, it can be really helpful to keep you motivated in your search. So rather than just saying, I don't have a job yet, you can look at that list and say, you know what, I applied to this many jobs, I reached out to this many people, I had that great conversation with the person that worked in that company, I am making progress toward my goals. That's the information that I have for you today, and now I'm happy to take any questions.
Wonderful. And I just want to echo 2 quick things off of Emily's last tip there. And one is that saving the job description. I can't stress that enough. I've definitely situation before where I bookmarked the link and went back and it was gone or the posting was expired. So I want to just stress, downloading, saving it in a Word doc, and that way you have that to reference when you do get called for an interview. And the last thing that last tip I want to share, going off of Emily's point of kind of tracking your progress and staying motivated, especially when it comes to doing the networking. If you're setting up those informational interviews or reaching out, for phone chats, make sure that as we're all, dealing with this time and getting, I'm sure, so many emails from work and personal different things going on, make sure that once you correspond with someone and select a time that you guys are set up to chat, send a calendar invite, because I've definitely had that happen a few times where, it kind of gets lost in the email thread and the person might forget about it. So send that calendar invite once you do select a time. That way it's both on your calendar. If you need to reschedule, you can go from there. But I've had that happen. And I think especially during this time when there's so much going on, being able to, that people can reference their calendar and go from there, I think that would help everyone a lot.
Yeah, that's a great tip, Katie.
So wonderful. So we are going to take the rest of this time to get through a few of the questions that you all have submitted during this time. So I'm going to start with a few that I did take from the registration from very popular kind of themes that were submitted. Emily and I both come through. And so I'm going to start with those questions first, and then I will be taking some that you all have submitted during this live webinar. So my first question, Emily, is do you have any recommendations for people who might be at a kind of career crossroads right now? And what strategies would you recommend for those of us that might want to use this time to kind of pause or explore a career change or career pivot?
Well, that's a great question. I think that this question hits on just a really common theme, which is career transitions are difficult and we don't do them until we're really uncomfortable. So this COVID-19 crisis has forced a lot of people into a lot of discomfort, and that's often when we're ready to make a change. So in a way, help move us forward. For people who are looking to make a career pivot, when I work with clients who are looking to transition into another field or industry or a completely different role, there's really kind of two pieces. Some people know what that next step is. They know what they want to move into, what their role is. And with them, I think it's really a matter of doing sort of a gap analysis. Where do they want to be? Where are they right now? What do they need to do to accomplish that? Are there particular skills they need to learn? Are there perhaps additional education, or are there transferable skills enough? So that piece can be done. They can be working as you move forward. Yet. So then I think that's really some time for some self-reflection and research. So by self-reflection, really take this transition time to think about maybe you don't know what you want exactly, but what would you like to be different? What didn't you like in your past role? Doing some reflective writing. There's a lot of great books, and you can work with a coach, or you can do this with friends and independently, and being able to kind of write out what you think you want, what appeals to you. And then again, it would be moving forward with some research, talking to other people in potential fields, or reading online.
Wonderful. Thank you. My next question is, should we still be selective when job searching right now, or should we cast a wider net due to this circumstance?
Yeah, I talked about that a little bit earlier with my plan A, plan B, etc. That's really, I think this is the fluidity of the current situation. This comes, I can give a broad answer, but then it comes down to microclimates, right? Industries where you may be able to move ahead with being as selective as you were before. There's other situations in industries where we are going to need to cast a wider net. And I encourage people to keep their options open. And so rather than limiting yourself with the plan you had from 3 months ago, take that plan, open it up a little bigger, and cast out, start talking to people, interviewing, applying at different locations, and see what the opportunities are and which ones appeal to you. So, and I think the other piece that's really important here is, if your next role is not the role you thought it would be, in terms of prestige or level or salary or industry or whatever, don't personalize that. This is really just what's happening in the economy right now. As long as you're moving forward, you're doing okay.
Wonderful, thank you. Do you have recommendations for those of us that might be trying to take this time to develop new skills or maybe build up our resume for different jobs in a new area? And I know that, we'll be sharing resources, but just wanted to get your thoughts on any recommendations for where people can go about
Yeah.
that.
No, again, I think really doing that gap analysis. So seeing where do you need to be and where are you right now? What are some spaces? I think for a lot of us, there was a really immediate gap analysis and noticing that we needed to figure out some virtual software platforms. So that's a short-term piece, but I think of that as an example. In order for me to effectively serve my clients, I needed to know how to work Zoom and I needed to know how to WebEx and be able to do some of those pieces. So sometimes it can be a quick skill builder like that. Other times you may look and realize that there's something new happening in your industry or you're transitioning in a way that you need to learn something new. I think you can do a lot online. I mean, it's kind of our only option at this particular moment in time. Coursera or LinkedIn Learning, some of different opportunities to take low cost or free trainings in a variety of areas. But this could be a great time to do that certification that you've been thinking about and put.
Right. Yeah, and as I mentioned for you all, we will be sharing, so LinkedIn Learning, Coursera, we'll be including that in our resource list that will be shared in your follow-up email. My next question from kind of our live Q&A, so individuals that have questions during this time, is how do you best present experience that's older than 10 years?
Well, the first thing I look at is, do I need to see that experience? Is it relevant? Now, sometimes it's very relevant and it might be the most relevant experience you have in the position you're applying for, in which case I'm going to give it more weight in the written materials. For most of us, the most recent 10 years is going to be the most relevant information. So I want that to have the most weight on that written presentation, whether it's a resume, CV, or a LinkedIn profile. For the older information, what I look to do is sometimes I include it, I show it, but I don't give it the level of detail. So at that point, it may just be listing that organization in the title, maybe showing the progression, a few key metrics or accomplishments. But again, maybe not going back all the way to graduation. So the way to frame any written material is think, for this particular employer, I only get to tell them 1 or 2 pages, depending on how long we've been out of the workforce. I only have 1 or 2 pages to tell them the most relevant experience. What's the relevant experience for this particular employer? So
yeah, that's great advice. And I think that goes back to your point earlier about really having that tailored and focused resume, that specific job that you're applying for in a particular industry.
Absolutely.
So next question that came in from the chat is, I know a lot of people bring this up, and not even during this current situation we're in, but does it look unprofessional or maybe desperate to apply to several roles within the same company?
So this is a question I've asked recruiters and employers, and it seems that different companies have slightly different perspectives on that. So again, that could be a question to ask in an info interview to get a side approach. So I can't speak specifically to any particular company, of course.
Sure.
In general, what I have heard is that for larger companies, they don't even know sometimes what different pieces you've applied for. They usually look in the applicant tracking system and see if you've applied to different things. But if what you're applying for is similar roles in different areas in the company, that's expected. Like if you're applying for a particular functional area across some different divisions, that makes sense. What I don't encourage people to do is just blast. Like if a company has 15 jobs open, you don't want to apply to all of them because that doesn't show that you're being intentional. So look at the positions, make sure they make sense for you, and try to tailor your materials to those specific positions. But again, anytime you can get insider information, that trumps what I have to say.
Okay, that sounds great. So my next question is, how do you feel about applying to jobs that are out of state, given that remote working is becoming commonplace now?
Again, I think if it's a job that you are qualified for and you tailor your materials, I would apply and see. Now, if the question is, will they let me stay in California or wherever you are and work in that location? I think a lot of companies are just starting to figure that out right now. Some companies have policies in place where they're fine with remote work. Others are starting to recognize that it might be helpful for them to do that. So again, I'm a big believer in keeping your options open. So I would say go ahead and apply. And
Perfect. My next question is now a good use of time to create a personal portfolio website in order to bolster your online applications or maybe online presence?
So that's a kind of an industry specific question. I would say certain industries where you really do want to have an online portfolio, particularly in certain creative fields, you're going to need that online portfolio.
Right.
What I would ask yourself as you're moving forward with that is, what is this adding to my online presentation? Or what is this adding to my, how I'm framing myself, my narrative? So if I have a student or a client, I'm trying to think, I was thinking a student because I had someone just a few weeks ago ask me this. I said, what are you showing in that website that does not show up on LinkedIn? Because LinkedIn have the opportunity to share projects and some things like that.
Right.
And he shared with me that he was trying to do a slightly different graphic presentation, and he wanted to have a way to show off some of his maybe more personal aspects and personality along with the project he wanted to do. So it made sense in his case to do that, and he was sharing it with some networking and some things he was doing. But I think a lot of times really check in with yourself and say, is this adding something or am I just replicating? That's what I would look at.
That's a really good point. Another question that I think a lot of people have, and once again, even outside of this current crisis that we're all in, is what are for your clients, what job search sites do you recommend besides maybe the normal ones that people, LinkedIn or Indeed? Are there other resources or sites that you would recommend people check out, especially now?
I would say for anyone who's currently enrolled in a program, who's at the university, looking at the university site. So Handshake is, I think, what UCLA uses. That's the platform they use. So as a student and a recent graduate, you're able to access, those are listings that are listed specifically for students. For those of us who've been out a little longer, yes, LinkedIn, I think Indeed, is a good kind of scraper. It pulls things from the internet. But what I would encourage you to do is try to drill down a little bit more. So obviously looking at a company website, if it's a company you're interested in, you're going to have the most current information that might even be on LinkedIn. I strongly encourage professional organization websites. So looking at your professional organization, look at looking to PRSA if you work in public relations. All professional organizations have a job search site as well. But the most important thing, I think, is to diversify your job search as much as possible. So yes, look online and look at that, but try to add in networking, events, talking to people, anywhere where you can connect. Another resource I didn't talk about are virtual career fairs. I've seen a lot of virtual career fairs coming up, many of them public. That's an opportunity, again, for you to try to connect with a recruiter who you can follow up with later.
Great. Thank you so much. I want to leave some time for you and I to wrap up. So as of now, that's all the time we have for our Q&A and questions. So thank you to all of you who submitted questions. We tried to get to as many as possible, but like I said, a lot of the things you brought up or other questions that might have been asked can be supported through a lot of the resources that we'll be sharing out in that follow-up email.
That's great.
But first, I just want to thank you, Emily, so much for taking time out of your schedule to join us and share your expertise and really, I think, reassure us all and maybe calm a lot of anxiety or even fears around this time with the job search and everything like that. So I just want to thank you so much for your time.
Well, thank you for having me, and thank all of you for joining us. Feel free to reach out and connect with me on LinkedIn or through the UCLA One platform, and I wish you all every success on your career transitions.
Thank you. And then just some final notes for you all. As I previously we'll be sharing out that can help you during this time. I also want to stress that our alumni career engagement website, which will also be shared in this follow-up email. We have been updating that webpage, especially now with COVID-19 resources, so working from home, things like that. So a lot of the same things that we can share on UCLA One, you can access on our website. So definitely take advantage of that. And for those of you that might be new to UCLA One and just learned about it today, or I think the benefits of being on that platform, I highly recommend you join and sign up to create your profile in UCLA One. What's really nice is you don't have to go ahead and learn a whole new system. When you sign up, you can actually integrate your either, I think, LinkedIn, Google, or Facebook to immediately get your profile up and running within less than 5 minutes. So it's really easy and user-friendly. So definitely join UCLA One, introduce yourself, connect with the community and the groups on there. And then once again, as Emily highlighted, our UCLA Alumni LinkedIn group, that's another fantastic resource, especially now. We'll be sharing our podcast, more webinars, things of this nature that can benefit you during this time. So just know you'll be getting follow-up from us, but I just want to thank you all so much for joining us for our first Career Conversations webinar today. As I mentioned when we started, the Alumni Association is here for you during this time, and we're really ramping up our online resources and programming to be able to serve your needs. So please, when you get that follow-up email, there will be a brief feedback survey about the webinar today. We'd really appreciate you taking up just a moment or two to complete that and give us ideas for other topics that would be helpful for us to cover in future webinars or future programming. So, we definitely value your thoughts and feedback. So thank you, Bruins. We're in this together, and take care and stay well.